Welcome to Wonderspace. It's great to have you on board. My name is Steve Cole, and over the past 58 episodes, I have been asking the same 6 questions to amazing people from around the world. The questions orbit around wonder and stories of hopefulness, and the setting for each journey is this shared window on the space station, from where we see everything from a different perspective. Before we introduce our guest, our friends at asknature.org are going to help us to re-wonder.
Kombucha is more than sour fermented tea. It's a thriving microbial metropolis. First, yeast use the sugars and nutrients in the tea to grow, producing alcohol. Bacteria feed on the alcohol and convert it into acids that inhibit the growth of competing microbes. The bacteria also use sugars to make long, thin fibers of cellulose that rise to the top of the brew, forming a multi-layered biofilm called a pellicle. The pellicle acts as a protective shield and a storehouse of material that the bacteria and yeast can convert back to sugar when needed. When yeast die, they in turn release vitamins and nutrients that are recycled by the microbial community. It may sound like a tiny production line, but in fact, it's a miniature ecosystem with a balance and cycle of life all its own.
Our nighttime orbit this week will take us over Egypt and the Red Sea. And to experience these views with us in this ultimate window seat, we welcome Elissa Freiha. Elissa is an Emirati-Lebanese entrepreneur, producer, feminist activist, and the founder of Womena, which is a female-focused media company which aims to inspire real change through storytelling and digital content. Elissa was nominated by our 24th guest on Wonderspace, Dave Erasmus.
I nominated Elissa for a ride in Wonderspace because she is an exciting, imaginative human who brings creativity to everything she touches, and I wanted to see what would come out of this conversation together in space.
The full-length interview with Elissa can be found on the Wonderspace podcast, which you will find on our website and on most podcast platforms. For this shortened video orbit, Elissa answers 3 of our 6 questions and starts by giving us a glimpse into her life story so far.
Life story so far is quite, I think, eclectic in terms of experiences. I have multiple identities, cultural identities. I'm Arab and American and grew up in Paris, but have been living in the Middle East for the better part of the last decade. And exciting times because I just moved out of Dubai and I'm trying to see where the next location is that's going to house me, that I can set up roots in. Right now it's Egypt and specifically by the Red Sea in Egypt, which is an absolutely incredible location. So it's always been quite interesting to me to compare and contrast different perspectives and different kind of cultural values, whether they're European or American or Middle Eastern. And when I first moved to the UAE, I saw it as this land of opportunity where you can kind of build whatever you want. And I was going to build a business at the time, which was an angel investment platform. We were going to be teaching financial literacy and managing investments. And very early on, we realized that most of our customers were going to be men. And that as 23-year-old women, that was actually going to be a pretty big struggle. So, we decided strategically to shift our focus towards women and teaching women financial literacy and inspiring women investors to kind of support the tech ecosystem as it grew and maybe shake up some of that liquidity. But a few things happened in that first path. And essentially, I had moved with a co-founder, and then my relationship with the co-founder quickly deteriorated. The investment networks business model was not something that actually was viable in the long run. So I had to think about how to pivot. But most importantly, I kind of fell in love with the feminist space. And I really understood the true state of women in the world. for the first time in my life. I understood that feminism in the 70s, the second wave feminism, wasn't something that was done and dusted in the past, but was something that very much was a starting point. And actually, there was a lot more work that needed to be done. So this is pre-Me Too. And after the Me Too movement happened and the dialogue around women happened, that spread globally and it spread to the Middle East. And the discussion and debate here became a lot richer. And so I made it my life's purpose to work towards equality and gender equity in the world, not just in our region, but starting in our region with the community that I represent as an Arab woman. And so Womena, which started as an investment network, I kept the brand name and the brand equity, but I completely shifted our business model to being a media company aimed at feminist content, change making, storytelling that really has a measurable positive impact on society. And that's essentially what I've been really fostering and growing over the last 4 years, is this platform that takes back ownership of the narrative around Arab women and makes it a much more authentic and nuanced voice that we can feel proud of and represented by. My answer to the question of inspiring individuals or inspiring projects always goes back to this woman called Rebecca Lolonsoli, who is in Samburu, Kenya. She's the leader of the Umoja Women's Tribe, which is a subsect of the Masai Mara. And what's amazing is that she's been the chief of this tribe since 1990, which first of all was the year I was born, but is specifically worth mentioning because it's such a long time ago. And the Masai Mara are famously patriarchal and famously kind of male dominating as a culture. And what Umoja is a safe haven for women, specifically women that are either being given up to child marriage, or women that are abused, or women that are in situations of domestic violence, for example. So it acts almost as a women's shelter, but it is its own village, and it's protected by women, run by women. Women are the financial providers of this village. They raise their children there. And if they raise sons, of course, their sons are welcome, but once they're of age and they want to get married, they cannot be married in this village. It's literally only for women and children. And the reason this village is so inspiring to me is because just in order to set it up, it took an insane amount of courage and strategic thinking in a place that's very difficult for that courage to be justified. But they were successful. And not only were they successful, is that 30 years later, they have this village. And for a culture like the Masai Mara, that's nomadic, that tends to follow water and resources for their livestock, the Umoja women have been able to kind of formalize themselves and get themselves recognized by entities like the United Nations or other foreign nonprofits, and receive enough donations to build a well so that they don't have to be nomadic, which puts them at risk down the line. So they now have a well. They're in the same location, which means that donors can find them or supporters can come visit them. And I was lucky enough to be one of those people. And they were able to build schools for children that are now there with them, living with them, and raise livestock on the property and actually protect themselves much better. So for me, that's a story that is continuously inspiring. And the woman who leads this, Rebecca Lolonsoli, taught herself English and now, travels the world telling these amazing women's stories and the women that she helps to support and protect from a potentially very dark experience in life. Nothing matters today like it used to matter before COVID. So there's no need for us to come back into this world with the same stressors, the same pressure, the same urgency to fulfill the desires of this pre-established consumerist society. It's really a time now for us to almost take the pause that we were on and extend that pacing into the future. Take our time with things. I think I really learned to sleep on it now. Whenever there's a big question that needs to be answered or a big decision that needs to be made, it doesn't need to be made right now. You can take a day to sleep on it. If somebody is urgently waiting for, a deadline, make sure you give them a paced deadline. Don't feel that same pressure to have to do everything yesterday, because it's not worth it. It's not worth it. What we really saw was in those pauses, in that paced style of living, we're able to reconnect with ourselves and reconnect with the important things around us and the important relationships around us. And I'm doing everything that I can to make sure that I don't get sucked back into an kind of artificially imposed, rushed pacing of things that make me forget to really live and be present.
To find out more about Elissa and the work of Womena, go to elissafreiha.com and womena.co. To engage with the previous 58 Wonderspace episodes, go to our website ourwonder.space. I want to thank Elissa for joining us on Wonderspace, and I hope you can join us next week for more wonders and stories of hopefulness.